Hello, and welcome to another episode of Solipsist Watched. I'm your host, the Social Solipsist, and this week I watched Cowboys and Aliens from 2011. Oh boy, poor Cowboys and Aliens. How do we talk about this film? Well, I guess we'll start with the title. Why would you call a film Cowboys and Aliens? Like, that's the kind of thing you name a schlock film from the 50s. Not even a schlock film from the 2000s or the 80s even. Why Cowboys and Aliens? What a genuinely awful name that does it no favors whatsoever. Like, that must have sabotaged just an immense amount of what this movie had or has going for it. Cowboys and Aliens, boy. All right, so I really like mashup genre fiction. I think it's fascinating. I think it's really interesting to see what people can do when they take tropes from sort of disparate genres and see what they can do mashing them together. Not only because it upends tropes and synthesizes into new things, but also because I think it has, more often than not, it adds more depth by the synthesis. This film doesn't do that. I really wanted it to. Okay, let's talk about what I wanted, or what I was looking for, or what I went in expecting, because I think all of them are relevant. They are disparate things. I thought that I was going to watch this film and it was going to be absolute cheesy schlock from top to bottom. And that's kind of what I wanted. And it's not that. And as soon as I realized that wasn't what we were getting, I wanted to see an interesting and unusual synthesis of the Western and like alien horror genres. And it's not that either. And that sort of leads me to my ultimate question with this film, which is, who is it for? At the end of the day, cinema is a money-making business. And as a side effect, people get to tell interesting stories. So, who is this for? I cannot answer that. I cannot figure it out. So, before we get into that, I don't think this film is bad. It's kind of fine. But it's not very good at any of the things you would hope it would be good at. It's not for Western fans. I think that's pretty obvious. It's got aliens in it. But there's the potential to leverage a lot of those, Western archetypes and see how they do in a different situation. But the film doesn't really do that. It's not for sci-fi fans. There's not a lot of sci-fi going on in here, beyond the sort of surface level alien stuff. And admittedly, some, good both digital and practical effects that are actually well executed, and some of them have some pretty excellent designs as well. There's not any depth to the science fiction aspects of it. It's not really a monster movie. That gets upended pretty quickly. It sort of teases that and then undoes it. And it's not really a horror movie for most of those same reasons. Everything is unveiled a little bit earlier than you probably expect. And so who's it for? It's not a good action movie either, I don't think. It's pretty bland. It's not very bad. It's not bad. It's kind of fine. The action scenes have an okay, decent Sort of mix of practical effects and CGI fights and these other things, but it also comes to a lot of the same things I've talked about before with like issues of fight scenes, especially in the 2000s, and with CG and cinematic choices of like cutting frequently and wild camera movement and all these other things. So it's not super compelling either as an action film. I don't think it really hooked me. I won't speak for, well, I will speak for other people. It's my fucking show. It's not interesting. The fight scenes are fine. It's about what you expect. So who's it for? That's really my sort of ultimate question when thinking about this whole film. It's directed by Jon Favreau, who I've talked about before in the Mandalorian episode. I like Jon Favreau. He seems to have a good artistic head on his shoulders in a variety of different disciplines, as a director, as an actor, as a writer, as a showrunner. I think he has a lot of talents. But there are too many problems going on in here, and many of the problems come from the number of cooks and how many and who those cooks are. I don't think I've talked about them before. Alex Kurtzman and Damon Lindelof and Roberto Orsi and J.J. Abrams, and there's one more. I forget who it is. Anyway, there's this like group of guys who've worked together a lot. Most of them work together on Lost or one of J.J. Abrams is sort of like the guy who ties it all together because he directed a bunch of different things. And they all keep getting jobs. A lot of jobs. They're getting hired all the time. They're in great demand. And they make crap. They write crap, they direct crap, they produce crap. And they all have their fingers on this movie. Roberto Orsi and Alex Kurtzman are and Damon Lindelof are all credited as writers on the screenplay. Kurtzman and Orsi are on listed as producers. It's got their grubby fingerprints all over it. It's not nearly as overt as some of the things they would get their hands on later. I think in particular, one of the things they've really destroyed in recent memory is just absolutely obliterating the Star Trek universe. Everything made after 2008 in Star Trek can go fly a kite. And they just write weird, bad crap. And they keep getting away with it because it's not bad enough. It's not bad enough to not perform at the box office. It's not bad enough to be offensive. It's not bad enough to be truly boring. It's just good enough. It's like it's the slop that Hollywood loves because it's inoffensive and makes enough money to keep going. It's very self-sustaining. It's this like horrible ooze that keeps eating scripts and shitting out shit. You'll have to excuse my digression here. Because I can feel them all over this thing. It's not as offensive. It's not as bad as any of the other things that I can think of that they all had their hands in. Clearly, Favreau has a good handle. Favreau, being Favreau, knows how to direct, and he's, I think, very good at working with his actors. I think he knows how to get the performances he wants, or at least the performances he needs. And that can go a long way in dragging a crappy film out of the ditch. The script in this film is pretty bad. It's not as bad as a lot of, like I said, the later Orsi, Kurtzman, Lindelof stuff. But it's pretty bad. But it gets away with it because the performances are actually pretty good. They're delivering some kind of, at best, mediocre, very, very predictable lines. And the plot goes in that same direction of being, it's like you can read the beats coming a mile out. And part of what that upsets me so much is that the setup before the script starts, basically, all the stuff that Jon Favreau basically got to make without probably any direction or any influence whatsoever from outside is great. I love the opening of this film because it sets itself up perfectly with very little. The premise is fantastic. It's such an interesting premise and has so many ways it could go. Man wakes up in the desert, doesn't know who he is or where he is, and has a high-tech looking bracelet on his wrist. Go. It's great. It's brilliant. There's so much you can do with that. Some of the sort of the driving element, which I'm not going to spoil. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to spoil it. But obviously it's no spoilers that there's aliens. The reason for the aliens, even that works pretty well. But everything in between it's not, it takes itself so dreadfully seriously. And this is a similar issue, since we're on the topic. I don't remember who's got their fingers on the Star Trek films. I'm talking about the recent Star Trek films. I know Orsi and Kurtzman, I know Kurtzman had, anyway, it doesn't matter. So I think all three of them did, Orsi, Kurtzman, and Lindelof. It doesn't matter. The biggest problem I have, not the biggest problem, a problem I have of many with the recent Star Trek films is they're all dreadfully serious. And no, I don't count the attempts at humor, the, witty banter or whatever. That doesn't lighten the tone. That's just, it's like putting sprinkles on a turd. They're dreadfully serious, and this film, which actually, now that I think about it, came out after the Star Trek 2009. It's got a lot of that same just lighten it up a bit. Not with witty banter, make the tone lighter. I don't want to delve in on a huge tangent on, cinematic or literary structure or whatever right here. But basically what I'm saying is like, you can't lighten it up just by sprinkling in, banter and shit. But this film desperately needed to be more cheesy. If you don't really know what I mean, I apologize. I'm not going to explain it. It's sort of a feeling. It just needed to be, it needed to take itself less seriously. It's got too much drama going on. It's got too many disparate elements that it's trying to knit together. It's got like an ensemble cast who, for all their good work, are working with a script that doesn't know where to place them. Doesn't really know how to make them interact in ways that are interesting. The only, every scene of interaction is incredibly cliche and just sort of dour and boring. And that's a shame because I think there's so much potential even in, I'm trying to think if I could fix the script or if the script has to be scrapped. The overall arc, I think, has to be scrapped because it's boring. From where the movie starts to where the movie ends, literally and figuratively, is very dull. And it is, if you don't even have to be particularly well versed in, stories, in have a knowledge of story tropes and things like that to see like exactly where it's going. And that is like such a sin, especially in a film that is like going for a weird mashup. That like, how could you make Cowboys and Aliens boring? How'd you do that? It's like, it's genuinely kind of impressive. And so the fact that it's not more offensive, like if this movie, I wanted this movie to be worse, because then it'd be entertaining. If it was just like if it was either offensive in like in a social way, if it was like more tone deaf or something like that, then I could at least enjoy it in a this thing sucks kind of way. At least if it had some levity to it, and not everything was, grim-faced and dour from beginning to end, then I could have had, I could have been more emotionally engaged in it. And my laughs wouldn't all be coming from like the, oh my God, are you really doing this? The thing I guessed 30 minutes ago thing. It's really embarrassing. And it's a shame for the actors because they put on a pretty good show. Daniel Craig's not an actor. I mean, we've talked about Daniel Craig before. In Knives Out and what was the other one? I don't remember. Anyway, he's perfectly serviceable in here. Unfortunately, he's sort of doing the same grim-faced, the classic kind of cowboy gunslinger, or Western film gunslinger thing, but it's very one note, and I don't think that's his fault. I think it's the script, because the script doesn't know how to give him an arc or give him any real depth. It plays to the tropes, the Western tropes, to a T. But he still puts on a perfectly serviceable show. Harrison Ford was like weird and off-putting when he was first on screen. And then I sort of like settled into it and I'm like, this is fine. If I didn't know Harrison Ford for, Star Wars and Indiana Jones and a couple of other things, it'd probably be less jarring, but it's like, it's still just Harrison Ford. He's a crappy actor. So if I wasn't hearing indie a little bit, it would be less weird. Some of the side characters are pretty good. I really like Sam Rockwell and Clancy Brown. They always, like, when they show up in films, I'm always having a good time because they do a good job. Arguably, Sam Rockwell is like the one. I mean, yeah, those two are arguably some of the only characters who have a genuine sort of interesting character to them. And it's not because of the writing, it's because of the actors. There's a bunch of other, like, notable faces but sort of not big names that are pretty good. And then there's Olivia Wilde. To be clear, that big sigh is not because she's doing a bad job. She actually does a pretty good job. But her place in the story is bizarre. And they like, there's no other way to say this. Olivia Wilde is too pretty for this film. Like, she's still got the same, that Olivia Wilde has, like, a particular sort of makeup that she always sort of has in whatever role. Even in something where she's, like, very different looking, or, well, reasonably different looking, something like Tron Legacy, whatever it's called. Like, it's still like, all right, you still got the same eyeliner and, and lashes and the same sort of, like, sort of severe cheekbone thing going on. And it's, she's got a very distinctive look. In addition to just, being sort of a standout as a beautiful woman, and sort of having that model level of beauty that, like, looks like it only belongs in ads and things. And they don't do anything to downplay that in this film, and it kind of suffers for it. I don't know how to talk about that further without spoiling elements of the later part of the film. So I will just say that there are, like, it's not what you think. If you had a thought right there with what I was saying, it's not that thing. Because I'm going to read your mind right now. But there are elements that come up that sort of give more credence to her not looking like she belongs. But it doesn't excuse it. It's still bizarre. The characters would all be like, why are you here? Who are you? Why are you so pretty in the Old West? It just doesn't make sense. Like, they just had to, make her dirtier or something. I don't know. It was just jarring kind of the whole time. It's like, oh, and, like, there's character name, and Olivia Wilde. It's just weird. But that also is sort of a hallmark of that weird, bad writing that Orsi and Kurtzman and Lindelof constantly do, where they don't really understand how their script fits within the world that they're writing. Where they write characters who are, like, obviously they're not, they are on the producer's list, so maybe they did have a hand in the casting. But, even if they don't have a direct hand in the casting, like, there are still some pretty clear patterns in how the things they work on are cast, where it's like, you clearly wrote in the script that you wanted, this character or this character who either naturally visually does not fit, or is dressed in a way that it's like doesn't fit, doesn't work with the script. Anyway, I'm sort of drifting off on a tangent, as I want to do. It's just weird. And the whole script doesn't fit that well together. For all the good performances, they don't really the characters don't really interact that much, and when they do, it's very kind of basic. It all evolves, like I said, exactly the way you think it will. And it's just sort of trite at the end, and that's sort of as I keep saying on this channel, like, it's just a squandered opportunity. I want to see somebody else do a Western aliens mashup. It's a cool idea. I love weird genre fiction. I love seeing tropes be deconstructed. There was a potential here, and it just doesn't play out. Visually speaking, I mean, I already talked about some of it. It's like, it's not bad to look at, but it's not good. It's got a lot of the same sort of flatly dynamic shots, if that makes any sense. Where there wasn't a whole lot of artistry, it seems like, put into there wasn't a lot put into how the frame is composed. But there was a lot put into how it was very calculated in how do we make this dynamic. It's sort of inoffensive and par for the course for a lot of that sort of mid to early 2010s style. And it gets a lot worse as it goes on. Actually, there's some portions in the first, in the first third of the film, in the first act mostly, that actually I think are much more visually appealing. And it really falls apart towards the end the most. I don't know how I feel about this film. That's the thing I'm dancing around, I'm grappling with, is like, I don't hate this film. There's a lot wrong with it. But there's a lot good about it as well. And I think ultimately it's just that it doesn't synthesize into anything more interesting than the sum of its parts. For better or for worse. Especially when you're doing a genre mashup, and you're even, if you're bringing in, you can't cast Daniel Craig in 2011 or Harrison Ford ever and not have them bring along elements of their prior roles as well. So it's like, you're not going to watch Daniel Craig and not see Bond. At least not these days. Maybe 20 years down the line. And Ford will never not be Solo and Jones. So it just doesn't synthesize into anything better or more interesting. It's very cliche. Very boring. I don't know. Like, for all that, I can't say don't watch this film. There's some good shit in here. Fuck. I can't tell. I can't tell if it's any good. It's too long as well. It's over 2 hours. Or at least the version I have is. I don't know if it's an extended cut or not. I don't think it is. I'm not aware that it is. All right. At this point, I'm rambling. It's a weird film. It's not weird enough, though. maybe check it out. If you don't, if nothing I said like is immediately really, really off-putting to you, maybe check it out. Let me know what you think, or if you've seen it before. It's just a bizarre one. Thank you guys for listening, watching another episode of Solipsist Watch, and listening to my just mindless ramblings. God, this film's so weird. All right, I've been the Social Solipsist. Leave me your thoughts on this film or any other. And I will see you guys for something else next time.